Thanks for the coffee.
Yep, that's fine.
Hi, I'm Jeanne. Today I'm with Eric Wojchick. We're here in the library at the University of St. Thomas. You wouldn't know it. We're going to try to find a quiet place to have a good conversation together. You ready?
Let's go.
What's your connection to St. Thomas?
I work with St. Thomas students through the Sustainable Communities Partnership here at St. Thomas, where we run projects through the council. I'm also teaching a class here at St. Thomas, and actually we met last night. And the class that I'm teaching is environmental policy. So we go into the history of environmental policy right up to the present, and we talk about Minnesota policy. We also talk about the kind of work the council's doing. And we're also running a project, a Metropolitan Council project through the class. So the students will have an applied project that they work on during the semester. They will be looking at strategies that we've identified to reduce carbon emissions in our region and how those strategies might affect equity. You know, unintended consequences, both positive or negative.
What's your work at the council? Describe what you do from day to day.
So I work in local planning assistance as a sector representative, and our job is to respond to local governments when they have questions about planning. They might have questions about some of the services that the council provides, and if I don't have the answer, I make sure to get that answer for the local governments.
What's challenging about being a sector rep?
I love working at the council, and I love working in this long-range planning. But I think one of the challenges is that quite often I may not see the results of my work because some of those effects might be 20 to 30 years into the future. And I used to work for local government, and when I worked for local government, I was working very much on the ground, working on bricks and mortar planning, seeing buildings come out of the ground and actually seeing the result of some of my work. So I think sometimes I miss that.
You clearly have a passion for fighting climate change. Where did that start?
When I was young, I used to spend a lot of time in the woods by my house, along the river in Rochester, Minnesota, the Zumbro River. These were just city woods, but I spent a lot of time in there as a kid, just by myself, kind of experiencing nature, learning about nature. But then when I started my work as a planner, early on in my career in Scotland, because I was working so remotely in Scotland, essentially working on an island chain, we had to really think about planning for the environment because everything had to be brought in by boat. So we really had to consider the environment in all of our planning decisions. So I think that's how I really got into climate change planning and resilience planning from the get-go.
How did you end up in Scotland?
I started out studying in Scotland as a part of a study abroad program when I was younger, and I absolutely loved the place and kind of promised to myself that I would come back. So I did come back to Scotland and I volunteered there for several years, and then that just kind of turned into a much longer stay. I ended up staying in Scotland for the better part of a decade. So my first work in planning was really in Scotland.
You recently attended the UN Climate Conference in Madrid. What are a couple things that we're doing here in Minnesota that you were proud to talk about?
We've been doing really groundbreaking water resources planning for a very long time. But we're also doing some pretty innovative planning around emissions reduction and also adaptation. And as you might know, the council recently won an award for its solar planning efforts as well. So we've been at this for a long time. I think Minnesota is more and more seen as a leader in this area.
So what are a couple key takeaways from the conference for you?
Well, I think one of the major takeaways for me would be realizing that climate change isn't something that's on its way for a lot of the world. I think for Minnesota, sometimes we can feel a little bit insulated from some of these impacts, although they are occurring here and now in Minnesota. When you talk to folk from other parts of the world, the impacts from climate change are very real. I mean, communities are having to relocate. People are having trouble with food scarcity and invasive species, and they can talk quite frankly about that. Meeting and talking with scientists, realizing that everything we do in Minnesota not only will make things better in the long run for us, but that it will affect everybody else in the world as well.
What do you do for fun or relaxation outside of work?
I love walking. I know that sounds really simple, but I think if I had my way and if I had enough time, I just love walking, like walking at abandon, just, not necessarily having a destination. Like my ideal Saturday would be to put on my headphones and just head out the door and see where I end up. And that doesn't necessarily mean walking through nature. It could be just walking across the city and stopping in at places along the way. Yeah, I feel like walking is the perfect pace for thinking and freeing up your mind. So for me, it's the ideal activity. I know it's a very simple answer, but for me, it's the perfect activity.
Eric, I've really enjoyed talking with you this morning. Your passion for your work comes through and bodes well for the council and the region's future.
Thank you, Jeanne.
If you'd like to learn more about Eric's work or the work of the Metropolitan Council, visit our website at metrocouncil.org.